What is up, guys? It is Hudson here today, and I want to talk about the most recent rankings and changes to mages in Shadowlands. As some of you may have seen, I made a video showing how powerful Venthyr's mage class ability Conduit was looking in Shadowlands Beta. Luckily, Blizzard felt the same way as I did, and they eventually nerfed that ability to the ground, taking it from a 10% buff down to a literally 1% buff. Nerfing it by, what would that be, 90% of a nerf, which is kind of crazy. Then they, in the same patch, they actually buffed Night Phase ability from having to channel for 6 seconds down to having to channel for 4 seconds, which was actually a very nice buff and made it feel a lot better to use as well. Then, in the most recent build, so that was about 2 weeks ago, now, in the most recent build, Blizzard added some new functionality to the Venthyr base ability that I will get into later, and you should definitely stick around to hear that because I think it is quite interesting. But what I want to talk about right now is the current Covenant rankings, and there's actually been a spreadsheet going around it includes every class and every covenant for that class and their covenant abilities rankings separated on like some sort of like tier list pretty much. And what I want to go over is the mage one and kind of shed some light on how like truthful it actually is, especially with these new changes that might not be reflected on the spreadsheet currently. So without further ado, let's get into things. Alright, so getting into this spreadsheet, many of you may have seen this. It's created by this guy named Dan. I'll actually link it in the description, so if you want to follow along, feel free to click that link in the description. And if you want to contact Dan, he has his contact information right here. And what this is it's apparently a pretty good representation of each class and which covenants are, or at least covenant abilities are best for that class and spec currently. From what I understand, it's pretty accurate. For the mage one, it's mostly accurate. For the other classes, I can't speak too much on that, but I've heard from other players that it is, for the most part, accurate. Now, the way that it works is, you can see the covenants up here. Kyrian, Necrolord, Night Fae, Venthyr. And then coming down here, you have the different classes. So we're going to scroll the whole way down to Mage, right here. And it's actually been updated on the 24th even, so it is literally been updated today. Unfortunately, I don't believe they included the Venthyr changes, but we will talk about that once we get to it. So I want to go down through each of these. We're going to start with Kyrian, and before we talk about each of these, I want to mention that there's 2 factors that you really want to consider when you're picking a covenant for like competitive reasons, for like throughput potential, right? You want to think about the the covenant signature ability, or not the covenant, sorry, the class ability for the covenant, right? So Kyrian gives you Radiant Spark, Necrolord gives you like fucking Skeletal Mage or whatever the hell it is. Night Fae gives you Shifting Power, and then you get Mirrors of Torment for Venthyr. You want to think about those, right? But those aren't really the only thing that you want to think about. You actually want to think about the Soulbinds as well for each of the classes. So those are 2 things, the class ability and the Soulbinds. And right now, Kyrian's looking very, very competitive for its Soulbinds because not every Soulbind is equal, right? You'll go through the tree and you'll actually get passive traits that give you extra damage or extra stats. They can give you like 5% mastery or like 5% first or like 5% crit or like random shit like that, right? And certain ones are way better than other ones. And I'm not sure if Blizzard is going to fix that. They've worked a little bit to do some passive damage ones like they did like Naya's Poison, I believe they nerfed a little bit. Could be wrong on that, but they are actually actively changing these. So while we have both of these available, they are still all subject to change. But now, getting into Kyrian, the ability is actually used to be, before this Venthyr thing, used to be BIS for Frost single target, right? So it was very good for Frost, especially since most players are going to be playing Frost, I'd imagine, if current tuning stays or goes into live, right? If current tuning on beta goes into live, most players will be playing Frost in Raid and Mythic Plus, and it would be a pretty good choice, honestly. Kyrian, I would feel fine choosing Kyrian because it's not bad for single target fire or arcane. It's decent. And then the conduits, right, the Soulbinds that come with Kyrian are, they're kind of overpowered right now. They're probably the best out of all 4 of the Soulbind options from other covenants. So overall, Kyrian's a pretty good option. The big downside that I have is you lose like its ability doesn't scale for AoE at all, right? So its Covenant ability doesn't scale for AoE, so it's kind of like lackluster in Mythic Plus, and it kind of feels bad to press an AoE. But I mean, priority damage is pretty important, so it's not the worst thing to be using. I wouldn't be super upset having to pick Kyrian. Now going to Necrolord, I don't want to talk too much about Necrolord. It's pretty shitty for everyone, and even in Arcane, it's pretty shitty. Like Night Fae sims better single target than Necrolord does. So that says something, and Necrolord like is supposed to fit with Arcane really well, and even in Necrolord's only good in 2-target and 3-target cleave, and then 4-target cleave, it's actually better to not even spam Arcane Blast on the 3 targets that it like cleaves on. So that's really enough of that, and I believe its abilities are also not very good either. Its soul binds, I believe, are not very good, is what I mean to say. Now Night Fae. Night Fae has a broken like Naya's poison or whatever that's kind of broken, that sims super high because they anticipate in the sims you have to be able to proc it every chance you get, but that's not how it will work in real applications of it. Because you like have to interrupt an enemy and stuff like that. I'm not 100% certain on that. I don't want to look too much into it. I just know that it's not it's simming, it's over simming right now, right? So Night Fae, the actual Covenant ability is pretty good for everybody but Frost. Frost, it says good right here, but it's only really good in AoE for Frost, whereas for single target, it used to sim at a damage loss, actually. I think they've optimized it a little bit, and it's gotten a little bit above that, but unfortunately, Night Fae, they gave Night Fae a slight buff, so now the channel's only 4 seconds instead of 6, so now it looks really good for Arcane and Fire, right? But it looks pretty bad for Frost. And then the soul binds, actually. The soul binds don't look bad for Night Fae. They look like they might be second or third best in terms of like their passive abilities. But I would be fine picking Night Fae as well. Like Night Fae and Kyrian before this Venthyr change, I would be completely fine picking, right? They both seemed all right. And you know, you can play them really as any spec, except Frost. I probably would not have picked Night Fae just because Frost single target seems bad, and that will be pretty important in raid. Frost priority damage, if you're playing Frost as your main spec, which I anticipate I would be doing if the current tuning went live. Now, coming to Venthyr. Mirrors of Torment, guys. Mirrors of Torment. I made a video on Mirrors of Torment. They nerfed it. I told you about that in the intro. They nerfed that shit down to the ground. They didn't nerf Mirrors of Torment exactly. They nerfed Siphon Malice, the conduit that came along with it, right? But what they just buffed is actual Mirrors of Torment. And the way that they buffed it is now auto attacks trigger the mirrors, right? You put 3 mirrors on an enemy, and now not just like hidden abilities or spells that are cast trigger it, actual auto attacks fucking trigger it. So you're essentially guaranteed to get 3 mirrors consumed on the enemy, which is straight damage that scales with spell power. Oh my god, my dog's going wild. Okay. Oh my god, she's crazy. What's she doing? Is she alright? Do you guys see this? Okay, well, continuing. Sorry about that. My dog was going crazy. Anyway, Venthyr's ability now will almost consistently, like, it will pretty much always consume all 3 mirrors, and then they actually gave it a time extension, right, from, I believe, 20 seconds to 24 or 25 seconds, so like you just have even longer. And then not just that, but every time a mirror is consumed, you actually gain like you gain something different for each spec that you are. So Arcane Mage gains 4% mana each time a mirror is consumed. Fire Mage gets 4 seconds Fire Blast cooldown reduction, right? And Frost Mage gains a stack or a Brain Freeze proc, so that means an instant cast Flurry, which would give you 2 Iceland Shatters and a Frostbolt Shatter. So that is pretty interesting. That is a pretty strong buff to Venthyr, and Venthyr was about the second best single target simming Covenant class ability for Arcane and Fire, right? Because of the direct damage it does. And now it actually suffered, they did nerf its direct damage a little bit to make up for this buff that they're giving it on like the refunds and stuff. But I honestly expect Arcane, Fire, and Frost to all be like pretty decent with Venthyr. We're still waiting on sims from Arcane and Fire to come out for this. I could probably run them because I believe it's implemented already in Simulation Craft, but I did not want to do it for this video because there's still so much stuff to change. I just kind of want to give a like holistic approach and be like, oh well, like this stuff is good, even if it sims, you know, a percent higher. you're going to want to wait and factor in some more stuff. So I'm going to wait to give recommendations. I'm going to wait till my guide to give recommendations on that. And I'll be making a whole Covenant choosing guide for mages as a whole, and then I will tell you what I recommend for each spec in that guide. So stay tuned for that. Now, I did not say that they didn't run frost sims, right? They ran frost sims. Let me post these up over here. Give me a second to grab these. Okay, so they should be up like over here. I think I'm putting in the right direction. It mirrors me. Oh, yep, there it is. So they should be over there. And as you can see, Venthyr's pretty strong right now for Frost with these Brain Freeze procs. And that actually includes both the Soulbinds and the Covenant ability, the class ability, right? So those are the two things that I said that need to be factored in when you're choosing. So right now for Frost, it looks really good. There's still some optimizations to be made, and Blizzard will have some changes. But in the current place, I would like probably be picking Venthyr. I would not feel bad picking Venthyr at all, honestly. It would be it would be very good for raid. In fact, if you're looking at this, and then also it would be you know what I mean? It would not be bad for Mythic Plus by any means, because those Brain Freeze procs are super nice, and then the single target prio damage isn't bad at all. Now for Arcane and Fire, like I said, we still have to wait for the sims, but I anticipate that it'll be completely fine for those. So it looks like we actually have 3 completely fine covenants to choose from right now. If it stays the way that it is, I really think that there won't be the biggest drop off in damage choosing between these. Like I said, we will have to wait for sims. But currently, it looks like Kyrian, or like the single target damage difference between Kyrian and Venthyr, might not be too super big. I do think that, you know, they should still pull the ripcord and stuff, but I would feel comfortable really picking any of these right now. But like I said, I will play the most optimal build, so we just have to wait and see what that is. Okay, so while editing the video, I actually realized that what I said back there was not entirely right. I'm not going to be okay with picking any one of these 3 decent ones. I will be very upset if I'm going to be in a situation where I'm not completely optimal, and it's very frustrating to have that happen. And I really do think that they should pull the ripcord, right? It's going to be quite frustrating to have that, but what I really mean to say is that I can live with this for the first patch, the first tier, right? I think I can live with this, and I don't think this is a horrible place for Mage to be in. I think it's probably better than just having 2 decent ones in Kyrian and Night Fae. I think having Venthyr in the mix is better than nothing for sure. Now, the one last change that I would like to bring up actually is there was an 18% mana regen nerf to Arcane mages in Shadowlands, and I believe it didn't go in the pre-patch build, but it probably will be in pre-patch when pre-patch goes live. So Arcane mages now regen less mana, and I would say that this I haven't tested this. There haven't been sims that I've ran on this yet, but if from a gameplay perspective, Arcane mages were regening mana too fast. I'm gonna be completely honest. We were regening mana. We would literally never run out of mana in AoE with Arcane Barrage. It refunds like literally 10% of your mana every time you Arcane Barrage. And I would say that it was like you just never had to think about mana. And I think Arcane Mage, like if they wanted to go that way, that would be all right. But I don't think Blizzard wants to go that way. So that's kind of why we saw these nerfs. Now, what does that mean for single target? Probably a slight nerf in terms of our current single target damage. But there's still tuning to be done, so there might be like, you know, I mean, if single target damage was too low, they would just put an aura modifier on Arcane and buff our damage by a certain percent. So I don't foresee this being the biggest problem, and I don't think this is a massive nerf, really. I think it was probably needed for Arcane's AoE. Not that the Arcane's AoE was like super powerful or anything, but just for the playstyle to make it better, and I think this is ultimately a good change. Alright, well, thank you guys once again for tuning in, and thank you for watching this entire long-ass video. Went through a lot here. I really appreciate it. Let me know any of the thoughts that you have down below in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and give me some feedback, seriously. I have a Discord that you guys can join if you have any questions as well. And if you don't feel like joining the Discord, feel free to ask in the comments. I respond to essentially everyone. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching. Enjoy your day.